My name is Ben Ford. I'm going to talk about ecosystem a little bit and how I think that a lot of us, especially those who have worked for corporate companies, have really thought about ecosystem and product in maybe kind of a slightly not right way. So, I worked at Puppet for quite some time. Probably most of you at least have heard the name. Local tech company, big in configuration management. We were kind of the people who invented, popularized something. It's a very gray area about the idea of DevOps. We did the state of DevOps report for a whole long time. I was there for 13 some years. It was quite a ride. There was a lot of change over time. The industry changed, the company changed, what we were managing changed, everything changed. But a couple of things about me and my experience there really never did change. So when I started there, we were just starting to build this whole idea of a commercial product on top of something open source. See, Puppet started out being very, very community centric, very open source. It was several years before we actually had a thing that we sold. We did services most, and then we did trainings and things like that. But when I started, we were building an enterprise product on top of that. The open source, open core model, I guess before that was really popularized. But then I did a whole bunch of things throughout my time there. I started off, I was hired as professional services. We did engagements and I did a lot of trainings and everything. But I moved into education. I built our education department. I may have actually trained some of you here. I know that I went out and I did a couple of classes at OSL. That's where I met Lance. Even moved into product. I did some podcasting and everything. Did some developer relations, but there was one thing that was common in that entire arc, and that was community engagement. I didn't quite know it at the time. I didn't have a name for it. I hadn't really connected the dots that was the thing that spoke to me. But it was engaging with people, working with people, helping them do things, helping them accomplish things. And that was kind of like the thing that spoke to me. I've got a couple of fun projects you might have heard about that I've built. Node Encrypt was a real fun one, and it was the first time that Puppet was able to kind of natively encrypt secrets into its catalog. So you could put a secret into a catalog that was encrypted for the node that it was being delivered for. So if somehow your catalog got leaked, only that node was going to be able to actually use that secret. Show off is like this actually this presenter that I'm using. I built it for the education team, and I just kind of kept using it because I really like it. It's got a lot of fun features. There's interactive things here. So like if I run into a problem with a slide, I can like hit a button and like type a couple of words and file a ticket and be done instantly. Totally designed for the developer experience. And now I'll talk about this a little bit later. I'm also now a founder and CEO. That's a real trip. But talking about community, it's like something that has been in my life, my whole it's part of my life, my whole life really. Back in high school and community college, I was involved with Linux users groups. I remember it was like 1998 or something. There was a hobbyist fair. We didn't call it a Linux users group yet. It was just like a enthusiast something or other. We didn't have a name for it. And I demoed VMware to a lot of people. And like nobody had ever heard of this whole idea of like, you can put a computer on your computer? What does that mean? So it's like, that was the thing that I did for a lot of time. It was a lot of fun. And then my partner is a roller derby skater. This is not them. This is just a really fun photo that I found of one of the local teams. If you're local or if you come around here much and you want to see roller derby, these are the Breakneck Betties. Her name is Darth Molly. They all have fun names. Great names. But we were in central Washington, Eastern Washington, and my partner was trying to found a roller derby team. and like there wasn't a whole lot there, and I sort of like got involved and started helping and started like showing up to events and started like running the scoreboard, doing some of their promotion, helping like coordinate some of the events and things like that. We moved over here to Portland, and there's the local Rose City Roller team, and they didn't have a recreational league at the time. It was like you were either just, piddling around doing practices, or you were on like the world-class team. And so I helped my partner found the first recreational league here, which I think is really cool. And now somehow I've ended up getting involved in conferences. I'm one of the one of the organizers for a config management camp over in Ghent, and I'm helping to bring back DevOps Days PDX next year. So if anybody, shout out here, is that if anybody's interested in helping, if anybody's interested in DevOps Days, come talk to me, because I could use some help. But one of the neat things about being here in Portland is that there's like all these creative spaces here. It's like where people build things. Like this was the first time I ever saw a bike that was taller than me. But there's the makers markets, there's like the craft fairs, and there's like all these things where people are building stuff, and then they're looking at stuff that other people are building. They're like, that's fucking cool. I think I could build something like that, and they get inspired off of everybody else's work. And I think that there's a lot of overlap. That is one of the things that drives the tech world, and we just kind of sort of pretend that it doesn't exist. I put a mention up there, Soapbox Derby. If anybody lives here or is staying here or whatnot, 2 weeks from now, I think it's the 6th, next Saturday, there's a hill in the middle of Portland, and they're going to be racing Soapbox Derby race cars down, and it is so much fun. If you've never seen it, go watch it. It the things that they do out there. One year I saw a fire truck loaded fully with water, and as they came by, they squirted you. And being in August, that was actually very welcome. But it's a lot of fun. But the thing that I think that's relevant here is moving on to the content ecosystems. And that's really kind of a vague sort of couple of words. But look at the things that you have. You've got a computer in front of you. If the internet went out, what could you do with your computer? Not really a lot anymore, because it's all dependent on content.
I disagree.
This is fair. But most of the world, most applications have some kind of internet connectivity. A lot of the things that you buy for having them. Like a bike, you buy it to ride around. Chairs, you buy to sit on, things like that. But a lot of things, like a Nintendo Switch or Puppet itself, or even just a waffle maker. If you didn't have waffle mix, what good would a waffle maker be? It's they aren't any good by themselves. They exist to build something. They exist to use something. They exist to enable something. If that was the only thing that Puppet did, if the only thing that Puppet did is what it came out of the box with, you would never buy it. If the only thing that your phone did is make phone calls and maybe SMS messages, which is mostly what phones do out of the box, you wouldn't pay $1,000 for them like people are doing these days. But there's so much content that you can put on them. So the thing itself is not the solution that people are buying. The thing itself is just an enabler for that. And so the whole value of a platform is the word platform, that's one of those words that kind of means what you want it to mean. But here in this sense, I'm using it to mean things like Windows or the iPhone or Firefox, Netflix, Steam, those kind of things. They don't do anything on their own. Firefox doesn't really do anything on its own. It exists to show you content on the web. And now that content is exploded, you can get your email, you can do spreadsheets, like you can do your accounting through Firefox. And all Firefox is a thing that enables all of this. But because of that, because it exists to show content, like I don't know how many of y'all remember the browser wars, but those companies realized that this was the thing that enabled all of this. They put so much money into it. Microsoft and Apple, they give away developer tools because they know that if these things don't exist, their platform means nothing. I mean, like, I don't know if anybody remembers seeing this. I wasn't there, but I saw it on video, and we all laughed for a really long time. But this is Steve Ballmer at one of their developer conferences, and you can see how excited he is. It is visible how excited he is. And if you listen to the audio, I considered putting video up here so that you could like hear it. Like he is so excited that his voice is cracking, and he sounds like he's like hyperventilating. Because this is the thing that he's trying to get across, is like developers are the entire reason for existence. They built their entire company on this. Without the developers, they wouldn't exist. And then if you look at like Apple, I know we all like to hate on Apple for their closed walled garden approach, but they were really smart from a business perspective by building this. A lot of people talk today about like how hard it is to get on the App Store, about like all of the steps that you go through review and everything, but that's because they never had to do it before. That was a thing. If I wanted to publish a software application in like 1995, not only did I have to build the thing, but then I had to put out money, my own money, to press a bunch of CD-ROMs, to print out a bunch of user manuals, because we had like paper manuals at the time, put them all in boxes and ship them off to some distribution company so that places like Best Buy or whatever companies existed at the time would sell them. And then I would hope that enough people would buy that I would get my money back. And even a decade later, like you could do that over the internet by then. But then all the problem of distribution and the problem of promotion was still mostly up to you or some kind of partner that did distribution for you. In 2008, all of that changed, and now any Yahoo could just poke a couple of buttons in Xcode, schlep some files off to Apple, and now everybody with an iPhone is looking at your application. And that was kind of the first time that was so simple and so easy to any mainstream application developer. And Apple made a lot of money out of it. I'm not really a fan of that walled garden approach, but they built this ecosystem that didn't really exist before. And I think that we could take some lessons from that, because those same dynamics apply in free and open source software, even Linux itself. Like, I don't know if anybody used Linux back in the 90s. I used Linux in the 0.x era, and it was rough. Linux didn't get popular because it was good. It got good because it was popular. And it got popular because it unlocked this ecosystem of developers, of hobbyist programmers who built stuff for it. And they were excited to build stuff for it. And that's why Linux, as it is today, exists. This is a slide that kind of people sort of like raise their eyebrows at. And I always had a hard time pushing it when I tried to share this message where I worked. The big conferences that you all hear about, KubeCon, reInvent, WWDC, they're all labeled as a company, right? It's like WWDC is all about Apple, right? reInvent is all about AWS, except it's not. They're the ones who made that space. They're the ones with the big banners. But it's all about the people who are building stuff on AWS. It's all about the people who are building stuff to go with Apple devices. One of the things that I really like about things like KubeCon, for example. You go to KubeCon, and you'll run into booths where there's like $1 billion company, and like right next to them is like two dudes working out of their garage or something. That's me right now. I'm working out of my garage. It's my company's me and a co-founder. But it's really fun seeing all the collaboration, because every one of these conferences that I've gone to, I wander around and I talk to people and I get ideas about things. And I hope that maybe they get ideas about things that I've said too. But like the space where we collaboratively build something is what makes that whole space worth something. The idea that you're building something for Kubernetes, you are making the value of Kubernetes just by building stuff. So how do you make these spaces? It's not all that different from cultivating a garden, right? You just throw some seeds out and like put water on them and they grow, right? It's not quite that easy. It's a little bit more complicated, because not all plants, they have the same nourishment needs. This thing right here, that's my house. When I moved in, the first thing I had to do was kind of this terraforming project because of drainage purposes, and I had a whole bunch of dirt left over. And so I made this mound and I planted some succulents on it, and I thought it was going to be really cool. I thought it was going to like take off and it would look really neat. And it was for a few weeks, few months, and then it all died off. So I planted some more and it died off again. And so I was like, well, I need to fertilize this thing. Died off even faster then. Ultimately, I realized something, and probably like the more advanced gardeners here already know what I'm about to say, is I wasn't really taking into account what the plants needed. As it turns out, succulents don't like a lot of water. They don't like a lot of fertilizer. And so I was killing them by naively just throwing stuff at them, which is what a lot of companies do with money. They just, well, there's a community, I'll throw money at it, right? So what I did is I just hollowed out the mound, and I put some like light draining potting soil in there, and then everything just took off. It was great. All I had to do was think about what the plant needed, and actually give them what they needed for nourishment. So with the community, you need a fertile environment to begin with. Hopefully that's something your product kind of facilitates, but then you need to incentivize people appropriately. Sometimes that's money. It's usually not money. It's usually things that are a little bit harder, you have to put a little bit more thought into it. Autonomy, sense of belonging, appreciation, recognize people for what they did, give them the ability to recognize each other, let them help each other, let them show off their projects to each other. So now this is me. This is my company, where I worked for, Puppet. By the end of the time that I was there, they weren't really doing those things for the community anymore. And I kind of, like, that's pretty common. Companies mature and they sort of forget how things work. So a good friend of mine, a coworker, and I, we made plans to kind of branch off and build something and actually do it right. And then they actually sort of like saved me a little bit of time and fired me, because I was in a community and open source, and that was not a thing that they were prioritizing anymore. So right now, originally when I first wrote the deck ages ago, I was going to sort of talk about the things that we're building. But then if you followed much about the news, you know that Perforce acquired Puppet, and then they did what private equity companies do, and they're sort of closing the Puppet source. In order to get access to it, you have to either give them a lot of money, or you have to sign a EULA that very, very much restricts your permissions to do anything. It makes it very difficult to actually even just run tests. They said not long ago that every single person that contributed to our open source pipelines was going to have to sign the EULA before we could just run the CI. I don't know how that's legal. I didn't really want to fight it, so we're just not signing. Like we're not going to do that. But the even more deep than that is they treated module authors as though they were being granted some kind of favor to get access to this closed source Puppet and these closed source dev tools and everything else to build content for their ecosystem, to make value for their ecosystem. So we needed open source Puppet to exist because we were building our platform on top of it. And so we kind of pivoted to keeping that ecosystem alive. Didn't change a lot in our trajectory. It just sort of like changed some order and changed some priorities. And we're now kind of building a new community that's subsuming the original Puppet community. We're looking for money. We're trying to get sponsorship to help grow this community and whatnot. This new community is built on top of Puppet's old Vox Populi community. And we're doing things like granting stipends for people to travel to conferences. We've paid for, I think, 8 people in this last year to go to conferences and speak or participate. And we're starting up a bug bounty program. But my company, we still need revenue to keep the company alive. We're working on that. But again, money really isn't the driver for people. These are things, it's not the money that we're giving people. It's the fact that we appreciate them enough to give them the money. So OpenVox is that fork that we made. Puppet closed the development because the Apache license pretty much allows you to do that. All you have to do is effectively publish a changelog, and you don't have to give anybody access to the actual source code. I didn't know that originally. Now I know that pretty. Not one of my favorite things. And so my company, we're in the middle of building on top of it. We're in the middle of building a new stack, and the foundation kind of disappeared out from underneath us. So we pivoted and we built a new foundation by forking Puppet. We call it OpenVox, and we've been spending some months working on stabilizing that fork. And the interesting thing is you give people a way to make a difference, and all of a sudden they want to help out again. So, fun fact, this new fork now has probably twice the number of developers working on it than Puppet has working on Puppet. I think that's a pretty good accomplishment. I'm quite glad about that. I'm quite proud of it, and a lot of it is that we gave people space to solve a problem. Fun fact: we actually as we were building it, as we were forking it, my co-founder rewrote all the pipelines so that we could actually build the product publicly and do that using GitHub Actions and such very quickly, very easily. He did all the work, and so clearly he knew everything. And so he was sort of the build master. He was the release master, and he did all of the releases. He went on a trip, and I told him not to take his computer. And things broke. And people in the community had to fix it. They had to fix the pipeline. They had to push out a new release, and they had to figure out how to do it themselves. And that was 5 weeks ago. And now we have 6 people who are regularly pushing new releases out. You give people something to do. You give people a way to make a difference. You let people solve problems, and they'll do it. So now, probably 85% of community engagement in the form of like talking, chatting, whatnot, happens in our new Slack that has replaced the Puppet Slack. And yes, I know Slack itself is problematic. We are looking for a something different, but a lot of our users are corporate users. A lot of people work at companies where they are very restricted in what things that they can actually connect to, and Slack was on the approved list in places. So I would love to figure out how to get Matrix or Mattermost or something in there, but a lot of our users just can't actually connect. We have a bridge to IRC, and maybe that's what we'll do, is just connect a bridge from Slack to something, anything. So I don't think that I've said anything that is really new or interesting or unexpected yet. I've mostly just kind of like reinforced the things you already knew about. Companies know this. You all know this. This is a thing that is very, very known. So why do they keep going sideways? Why do they keep getting lost? I think that there is a certain way that business people, more so than technical people, approach open source. And that is that open source gets you to market fast. That's really it. You don't have to build it because it's already there. You can just use it. You don't have to care about their ideals. You have to care about their license to the point that you don't violate it, but you don't really care why it's open source. You care about that you can use it, at least if you're a pointy-haired business person. And so a lot of companies get built on the idea of open source to begin with. And the returns are fast. They're super easy. You build, you get more stuff, you make more releases. And so they get complacent. This is something that's always there. It's kind of their nappy or their security blanket or something. And nobody ever writes down why. Nobody ever explains why they're using open source. Nobody ever explains how this core is what enables the value of their product. And eventually, you get to the point where your investors are kind of like, at your door. They're like, just money. You got money? Give me money. And again, nobody's written it down. There's nothing to push back on. There's nothing to say, well, hey, we can't. And investors say, well, what if we stop giving that away? Do we really need to invest all this time in those people over there that aren't really giving us money? When we were acquired by Perforce, that was one of the things that happened. The VP of engineering talked to me a lot. In every single conversation that I had with her, she always had this phrase, well, yeah, but where's the money in it? Every conversation. And they flew me out to Boston to present to their leadership team what we were doing with community. And I had a big presentation that explained sort of like the theory of community and how we enabled and how we fostered community and how we built this way that people could help each other and they could get their meet their own needs and we got 15 minutes into it, and you could see there's kind of like the foot tapping sort of thing. There's like checking the watch, and at some point she's like, well, yeah, but when do you convert them? It's like that's not really how it works. I mean, we do have a funnel for like the DevRel qualified leads, and but that's sort of self-selected. We don't convert people. That's not what community's for. We're building a foundation. And she's like, well, yeah, but where's the money in that? So as companies mature and they start focusing on the profits, they start focusing on the money. They forget about the ideals. They forget about like the things that are actually the company is sitting on. Because we didn't realize that was a thing that we had to write down to begin with. We didn't realize that we had to evangelize that to our own leaders back in the day when it was easy. So when it's easy, when you're building stuff fast, when you're making releases fast, when you're pulling in OSS dependencies and everything, that's when you need to be telling your leaders, this is why This is what we're doing. This is why we open source. This is why we facilitate community. This is why we use our ecosystem. Because if you don't, you lose your foundation. Your business crumbles. Over time, if you don't have a foundation, everything falls out underneath it. And you see that, like so many of these companies that in the process right now, is they've lost the foundation that they built their ecosystem on, and they don't have anything to replace it. And of course, like if you saw my talk last year when I talked about private equity, I think private equity makes it even worse because they laser focus on nothing but short-term profits. So getting out of this mindset, I mean, it's like the thing that got us into this is like forgetting to do something, forgetting that we needed to share these ideals, that we needed to evangelize this. The way that we get out of it is also small, simple, easy, but kind of huge, actually, is we have to treat the ecosystem as a product on its own. Because the thing that you sell, all it does is enable that. You look at Ansible, you look at Puppet, you look at, I don't know, Steam, Netflix. Nobody buys Puppet Enterprise to have Puppet Enterprise. They buy it because there's this huge forge with modules that do everything from IIS to Apache to, I don't know, SendGrid to like everything. Like there's modules to do everything that are on the forge already, and you can take them off the shelf and plug them into your ecosystem, configure a few things, and all of a sudden you've got automation to do everything. That's what people pay for. They don't pay to have the toolbox. So if there's one thing that you'd like take a picture of and send back to your boss, please. This is the thing. However you make money, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's support, it all is contingent on this ecosystem existing. And you cannot forget that. The ecosystem is the thing that matters the most, even if you don't charge a penny for it. So when you treat something like a product, you understand your customer's need so that you can turn those into requirements. And then you work with teams all across your company to deliver on those requirements. And you end up with a successful thing or idea that meets these goals and provides value. So when you're talking with your support team, when you're talking with your product team, when you're in an engineering meeting talking about a new feature, you talk about the product, you talk about the requirements. Your community users are the customers, and the value that they get is this healthy and engaging community, but the value that you get out of it is that solid foundation for everything else. So we make sure that there is a seat at the planning table for ecosystem, always. If you add a new feature, does that increase the cognitive load for building content? Or does it make it easier? Is something going to encourage community development? Then that brings value. And that's how you get engineering teams to build things that aren't directly tied to a dollar coming in, because you can show that it supports your foundation. And then kind of one of my favorite ones here. When you build a feature, is it focused on enabling third-party content or capturing market space? Because that phrase there often really means deny space to others. So at Puppet, the closest I was able to get to this was getting the developer kit, sort of like on the release checklist when we were doing a release. at the end, they'd say, "Oh, by the way, we're like next Monday we're going to release this. Is this going to fuck anybody over?" That's a little bit too late. It's honestly, they should have been part of the planning meetings to begin with. Without the users and content, that thing that they were about to deliver meant nothing. And as it turns out, we saw this. If you followed the history of Puppet, and probably that's maybe minutia that 2 or 3 of us in here might know, but it showed in all of our products that failed to actually achieve adoption. Puppet itself was the only thing that Puppet ever built that was community and ecosystem first. And it's also the only thing that we ever introduced truly successfully. We had a couple of other products. We poured a lot of money into them. Puppet was the only one, Puppet and Puppet Enterprise, I guess, were the only ones that actually took off in the market. So back to like what I was saying about capturing market space, meaning deny space to others. When you hear people starting to throw around words like monetize, really truly make sure that they know what it is that they are monetizing, because they probably don't. They probably have a very, very naive idea of what they're monetizing. And post-acquisition Puppet is a real good example here. Like right now, literally right now, they are in the process of monetizing, closing the source, the developer kit, the Puppet developer kit that helps people write content for the ecosystem. They are increasing the friction for people building content and giving their product value. Sure, they might squeeze $1 or $2 out, but that making it harder for people to build content is going to cost them so much more in the long run. But private equity, they get $1 today, sure. But I mean, from my perspective, I don't really mind that much because they're already losing customers to it, and I'm picking some of them up, so I'm okay with that. So how this relates to the company that I'm building is that we have a different ethos. The fork that we're supporting and the products that we're building, they're OSS all the way top to bottom. We're not selling access to the products. We're not selling licenses. We're enabling success. And it's a very subtle shift, and a lot of our customers don't really hear it when we talk that way. But I think it makes a big, big difference. It's not the thing that we're selling. If you want to go use OpenFox without paying us money, you can do that. That's fine. But we're making sure that you're successful when you do it. We've incorporated as a public benefit company. And really all that means is that we get to define the things that are valuable to us. So fiduciary duty is a thing that all corporate companies, all companies that have stakeholders are required to hold to. Basically, if you have a stakeholder, you have to do things in their best interest. For most companies, for most stakeholders, that's dollars. So you have to do the thing that brings the most dollars in. Being registered as a public benefit company means that we get to define some of that, and we can also say, sure, we'll bring money in, but also this is what we find valuable. And if we ever get investors, I'm not going for investment, but if we ever take investors, they have to sign on to that in the beginning, so they know what we're doing, and they by buying in, they are explicitly agreeing that this is also valuable to them. A lot of other companies are like Patagonia is a real common one that people know about. And because we are not purely profit driven, and to be clear, that's not the same as 501c, a nonprofit. It is a completely for-profit company. It just lets you define what your profit or what the value you're generating is. And because we can do that, we're building programs that allow us to sort of share this abundance here. So we are doing profit sharing programs so that as we start selling our new products, as we start selling our services, people who have contributed to the product through GitHub sponsors will get a little bit of a kickback. We're building, maybe next year I'll do a talk about that. We're building a platform that kind of automates that a little bit. Goes through our code base, identifies who's made commits since such and such time, figures out what the ratio is, etc. And that's surprisingly hard to calculate because it's not lines of code, it's not number of commits. So we're working on what that algorithm ought to be, but they get a little bit of a kickback there. And it's not intended to be like a paycheck. It's more like beer money or bike money or whatever your hobby is. And then we work with other players in the market rather than trying to cannibalize everything. We don't need to own the entire market because we aren't purely driven by profit. So we're not incentivized to build things just so that we can sell them. I'm sure that anybody who's worked at a software company has been in this point where you're like, why are we building this thing? Because it's a thing that we can sell. Puppet built a product called Bolt, and the only reason we built it, I mean, it's actually pretty good now. Bolt is a pretty good tool now, but we invested a ton of money into it to get there, and the only reason that we built it is to compete with Ansible. And like, there really wasn't a reason why we didn't just like use Ansible to begin with. Like, why not? They were open source. We were open source. We could have done that, but no, they needed to have something, a line item that they could say, hey, we have this thing that we're selling that they don't have. We're not incentivized to do that. We're incentivized to kind of find the most effective and efficient solutions. So we sell solutions, and sometimes that means we grab something off the shelf, and sometimes that means we build something. Sometimes that means we partner with other companies. And the neat thing is, because the way that we're looking at this, we sort of avoid that prisoner's dilemma that many companies fall into. And that's, if you've not heard that before, it's kind of like why the dirty cops sort of separate you if you get arrested together. Is if one of you confesses, or if like you both profit the most, you're both better off if you both hold the line. But if one of you confesses, you're better off than the other one. And so if you don't trust each other, or if you don't have a way of communicating, people often break because they're like, well, if I'm the one that spills the beans first, it'll be better for me. And in the tech world, that we see that in like the first company to build something incurs a lot of the costs to do that, but then everybody else sort of benefits from it. It's kind of like the opposite of the first mover idea. It's true, but that's also one of the things that we're selling is like, if you're all my customers and you pay for something, you get it as well. And if you pay for something, you get it as well. And that's one of the things that we're selling to our customers. And I will fully admit, it is not the path to a unicorn. I don't ever expect to be $1 billion company. I don't want to be. But we're already making pretty decent headway. I'm actually signing our first contract with an M in it this week. And we are not yet, but we will be by end of year. Oh. Okay, well, I think this is pretty obvious from what I've said. I'm a dirty hippie. Probably a lot of you all are too. I don't believe that capitalism is sustainable, and I'm trying to find my end way around capitalism. And I have a lot to say about that if anybody is interested, but I am out of time and somebody else is coming up.
We're actually at the end of the track. Let's thank our speaker. And that does mean the room is ours, so if people want to stick around and ask you questions,
Cool.
There's a little short break between now. Look at that, you're right at the end. Perfect. A little short break before the final talk of today. But the last one for Science and Community got canceled. So this is actually the last talk. We'll start up again tomorrow at 10:45. Derek Wong is going to talk to us about his experience as a kernel maintainer, which is going to be hot. I saw him on a panel. It's going to be so good. Hope you come back tomorrow. All right.
Definitely.
Back to Ben.
Cool. This, like the one thing that I was going to talk about in this slide, I'll just tell you to go Google it and read about it a little bit. The island of Madeira is actually where modern capitalism was sort of born, and that was sort of the first time that labor, land, and money were all commoditized at the same time. And because it was an island that was far away, there was no social pressure, and they were able to take slave labor and use them like resources, like numbers in a spreadsheet, and nobody gave them a stink eye for doing that. And they made a killing. They made so much profit. It grew so fast. It was like 20 years. They just doing sugar production. They shot to the top of all the charts. And then in less than 20 years, they had used up all the resources on the island, and it crashed. And then they did what capitalism today does. They moved to another island, and they did it again. That is kind of what capitalism does these days, and they're just going to keep doing it until all of the resources everywhere are consumed. So Madeira, the birthplace of modern capitalism, read about it. It's fascinating. Yes.
You mentioned that you're trying to get off of Slack. Matter Bridge is really good. It has, I don't know if you use it before, because you're bridging the IRC.
We're using Matter Bridge to bridge to IRC right now.
Okay.
But I don't know anything about it other than that one thing.
So it supports bridging from Slack to a number of different other Mattermost. I think that's where it gets its name from, Mattermost. And you can also do it for Matrix and there's a whole long list of things. But if you already use it,
Yeah. I might come ping you later, because the big thing that we have problems with right now, well, there's two of them. One is flood control. IRC doesn't like that. Slack makes it real easy for you to put a whole bunch of text in a single message. It just makes a giant mess in IRC, and it doesn't enforce threads. So we have to remind people don't thread, because you can't turn that off in Slack. But if you know of solutions for either of those, or if that's better, connecting Slack to Matter or something, that would be excellent. Yeah. But
I have a number of questions for you. I guess.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, the place to start. This is just a general purpose question. What is your company's stance on AI? Do you use it in your automation?
We do not.
Okay.
We don't have a ban on it, but we've kind of delayed that a little bit.
This gives me confidence.
Very much do not believe that AI is I think that we're in an AI bubble, and I think that people who build their companies based on AI are going to have reckoning coming to them.
Well, it depends. It's a very broad field, and machine learning is not AI.
Machine learning is not AI.
Well,
We
I mean,
are.
It is, but it's just different discipline.
Well,
It's
the
not
marketing term.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can forget that.
We actually are building a product, or we have on our roadmap a product that uses machine learning, because OpenVox has a lot of data about your infrastructure, and if we can infer patterns, we can give you early warning signs of things. But that's not an LLM.
Okay.
And there are 0 lines of code in our project that are vibe coding.
That's probably been going after you. I mean, if I were up some work of the software that I had, I might be jealous at least.
That's a very complex question.
We want to turn the mic off for this
question. No, they are involved in a lot of our conversations. They are still at the table with us. We've worked really, really hard to try to bring them along, because we're trying not to be a hostile fork. I don't agree with a lot of the things that they're doing, and a lot of the things that they're doing are anti-competitive and anti-community. And honestly, I don't know if you know much about a Puppet, but one of the parts of it is called Factor, and that's the tool that kind of abstracts details about your operating system. So it'll be the thing that you can ask a Windows system, an AIX system, a Debian system. What's your host name, and it'll tell you that back whatever platform you're on. Clearly, that's a schema, and its only value is that it's universal. So if you fork that, you are breaking that value. And I suspect that that's probably obvious to you, but we have had hours and hours of meetings with them trying to convince them not to do that. But they won't, because they feel like they can make a little bit of profit selling it. But we're still having those conversations. They don't fully know how much business they're going to be losing to us. I think that they suspect, but they don't know. And I think that after that piles up, they're going to be a little bit more aggressive in conversations. But right now, we actually have a language steering committee that is, we talk about major changes that'll change how the language works or how the platform works, and they're invited to participate. They don't participate as much as we would like, but they are invited and they do show up sometimes. So, I am very interested over the next year as things heat up a little bit. I'm interested to see how that answer changes. Yeah, fingers crossed.
So
Okay.
about private equity,
Yes.
my alma mater does a lot of that. I don't do that. But it's a very diverse space, and venture capital is, by the way, a subfield of private equity.
Yes.
People don't necessarily realize that. I would be against slamming private equity and just saying, oh, it's all evil.
That's fair.
Yeah. But with that said, money does create evil. It's the growth medium.
Yes.
So, yeah, this warrants further discussion.
Yeah. I think that my beef is more with capitalism as a whole, and the way that companies with shareholders are beholden to the dollar. They
Yeah, and we should definitely talk more because there's just so much cool material, and also you and I may actually know contributors in common, and I may be conflicted from talking with some of them, and I'm still trying to figure out some WTF kinds of things. What else can I say?